Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elliot Kallen, CEO of Prosperity Financial Group, and welcome to another very exciting episode of Meet the Expert with Elliot Kallen. Today, we're talking to a CEO, business owner, Fortune 1000, right at the top of his game in its height of the 1990s to 2010s. He ran Primerica, the number one direct sales insurance company in the world, I believe. He'll correct me if I'm wrong on that. John Addison. John, welcome to the show.
Elliot, great to be here. Wonderful to be with you today and look forward to spending some time talking with you.
So we're not going to talk about insurance, everybody. You don't have to worry about it. You're not going to be buying term insurance or invest the rest. That was their phrase.
Right.
We're not going to talk about why you should buy whole life over indexed, over term, or anything like that. Don't worry about it. Don't turn off. Don't go to delete. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about fear. We're going to talk about the two biggest motivations out there in the human world is the fear of success and fear of failure.
Absolutely.
So it's very, very interesting. So he's got a book out right there, Turning Fear into Fuel. He's got another book out with his picture on there. You can see him on the right side of this screen or my right side of the screen. Let's talk about this for a moment. If you want to reach me, I'm at 925-314-8503 or Elliot, ELLIOT, at prosperityfinancialgroup.com. Or you can see about another 125 of these episodes now in the top 2% in the world of all financial podcasts at prosperityfinancialgroup.com. So, John, let's talk about fear and doubt, today's leadership crisis. Let's get your spin on what's going on with fear and doubt and why we aren't growing as fast as the nation as you grew your company.
Well, Elliot, number one, it's great to be here with you and your audience today. And I think the best way to frame it a little bit is my personal journey. As you can tell, anyone listening, this is a, authentic Southern accent. I'm born and raised in Covington, Georgia. Was raised by a very positive family. I'm only child. My mom and dad, though, were two of the most positive, upbeat. I had a blessed childhood. But where I was raised and the family I came from, it was go to college, go get a good job. There was nothing in my background that said I was going to be CEO of a public company. Answered an ad in the Atlanta paper when I graduated from college, and it was rapidly growing insurance company looking for bright young college graduates, demand new home office. And this is in 1981. I was young, college graduate, bright was questionable. And I went to work there. And at that time it was known as A.L. Williams. And it was when the company was just starting. Thought I would work there for about 3 years while I got my MBA that I was working on at night. And it turned out I'm still on the public board. So that's now 44 years later. I'm still with the company. And so the gentleman that founded the company, Art Williams, sold it in 1990 to what became Citigroup. So it was Sandy Weil, Jamie Dimon, Jay Fishman that wound up CEO of Travelers, Charlie Scharf, who's now the CEO of Wells Fargo. It was heavyweight people took over our company. And by then I was a vice president in the business, but when they took over, honestly, they could have written a book on making all the wrong moves with our company, and it crashed. And I was a country boy from nowhere, Georgia. These guys were Wall Street titans, and they came down for a meeting. Had a group of us in a room that had been with the company for a while and were asking us, how's the company? What do you think? So everybody was afraid because everybody was afraid they were going to get laid off. Their jobs were going to be gone. Everybody was saying, oh, it's been tough, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel, blah, 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 kind of these pat answers. And it got to me and I said, guys, y'all may never want to ask me again, but you guys are cratering the business. You're killing it. And I went through my logic of what was going wrong. Next day, I got a phone call. I thought I probably was out of a job. But the next day, I got a phone call from Jamie Dimon. and, who's CEO of JP Morgan Chase now. And he said, I want to thank you for being the one honest person in the meeting. And long story short, my career, he came down for a meeting, said, we want some ideas of what to do. I met with a group of folks. We put together some ideas, met with them, and the company turned around. 3 years later, I was president of the company. By the year 2000, co-CEO. And then when Citigroup and the financial world collapsed in '08, literally on top of our head, I was running a very profitable, very overcapitalized business. And we went through a 2-year war trying to get our company out of Citi, which we did in 2010. It was the most successful IPO of 2010, went public a little under $1 billion market cap, now over $9 billion. So that story is what in my life said that was what was going to happen. And really, literally nothing. And through that process, I was scared to death. The number of times, particularly when we were trying to get our company public as the market collapsed around us, I was like, I woke up every morning scared to death. And what I learned in the process is we all are human basket cases. We are all loaded with fears. We all have fears, doubts, uncertainties, particularly that show up at 3 o'clock in the morning when you wake up and can't go back to sleep. And what I most learned is you can either allow your fears to paralyze you or you can allow them to motivate you. You said something very good in the beginning. I'm a human being that is way more motivated by the fear of failure than I am the desire for success. My mother was my hero. I always wanted to make her proud in whatever I did. And I am a natural pleaser. I want people to go, you're doing good. And so a lot of times I see people that they allow these little demons that are in their heads to hold them in place, when in truth they have the ability, they have the intellect, they have what it takes to go succeed and achieve great things. And you've just got to recognize those little fears as nothing but anxieties that are within you and go win anyway. Go get it done.
John, it's funny. I've started now 5 companies, and some people would call me a serial entrepreneur. We're talking with John Addison, who is this former president of Primerica insurance company.
Yep.
And so at 3 a.m, none of us sleep. Entrepreneurs, their night ends about 2:30, 3 a.m, because you're right, everything is going through the brain. It's a swirling machine. But it is true, the motivation for success and a motivation for not failing are very similar.
Absolutely.
And so there are people who are highly, highly successful that did it because they didn't want to fail. And there are people that are highly, highly successful because they were very driven towards success. And I don't know where the number shakes out. It's probably 50-50 at the end of the day. I don't really know. But I do know, as an entrepreneur, and we speak to a lot of entrepreneurs here, but 60% of our listeners own or have owned companies here. And they can't sleep, and they have every fear in their mind and every doubt. And they've got financing and accounts receivable and HR and lawsuits and now we have tariffs and uncertainty coming out of Washington, D.C. and everything's fear.
Right.
So
and we certainly have that in spades now.
How do you separate out? What's your advice to CEOs to separate out this fear to drive forward in spite of the fear?
Well, I think the biggest thing it takes courage. That in by the way, people, a lot of people think some people are just courageous. The truth is, courageous people are scared to death too. But it takes courage. Sir Winston Churchill, famously said, courage is the first of human qualities because it is the quality that ensures all the rest. And you have to develop courage. You got to keep going. Look, right now, hey, I mean, watching the market today, we're taping right as it goes up. I mean, these are crazy times. I mean, the market is like, the one thing we have is volatility and uncertainty. Okay, so two things that we certainly have going on right now. And you've got to realize I got to, I have to, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, I've got to control what I can control. I've got to control what can I get done today that's going to advance my business, my life, my team. What can I do today? We were trying to get our company out of city at a time where it was critical we get the business out. It could not function in what had become city that had hard money from the government, complete financial chaos. We couldn't run incentives for our sales force. We couldn't pay bonuses to our sales force. We were in a position where it was just, one day in an argument with the CEO of City at that time, I said, look, you have unplugged the refrigerator, talking about our business. The food's going to spoil. Okay. We have to get this out of there. And deals weren't happening. IPOs weren't happening, but I knew I had to get it done to take care of the families that were in our company. And so the biggest thing I learned through that chaos was to get up every day, go, okay, I can't control what's going on in the market. I can't control what's going on with the interest rates. I can't control what's going on in deals. What can I control to advance what I'm trying to make happen right now to the next stage? And many times it meant during that time, we would think we were through a door and the world would collapse and we had to go another direction. So as a leader, you've got to realize you can only control what you can control. And you got to control those little demons that are inside you. And you got to say, did I do something today that moved us closer to the goal we're trying to get to? And so it's a day-to-day battle. One of the things I see in a lot of people, not entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are very focused on building their business, moving forward, winning. I'm just talking about people out there. A lot of people have these dream sheets with the 30 things they want to do before they're 65 or whatever and all that. And that's all fine and good to have big dreams. But if you don't do something today that moves you forward, none of that matters. You just got notes written down on a piece of paper. So I believe action. Action today to get things done, Elliot.
We're talking with John Addison of Primerica. I'm Elliot Kallen. You're listening to Meet the Expert with Elliot Kallen. If you want to reach me, it's 925-314-8503 or www.prosperityfinancialgroup.com, and then Meet the Expert with Elliot Kallen. We talk to entrepreneurs all the time. I wrote a book over my right shoulder called Driven, and it's about entrepreneurship and success because I got the feeling that today's entrepreneurs are being brainwashed incorrectly that you could start a company like Facebook in college and 5 years later you're a billionaire.
Right.
And you can't. Mark Zuckerberg is an exception to this rule.
Right.
And so people think that though, and then they're heading up to disappointment and family ridicule, and their vision gets all tilted, and they're beaten on by the people that love them the most.
Right.
And I wanted to put that down there, that most people's success looks like a series of Z's and zigzags, backwards, forward, up, down. And I'm sure running Primerica was no different.
No, winning and succeeding. I always say success is not a destination. It's a journey. And you're going to have times when you think, my Lord, things are perfect. I'm such a genius. This is the greatest thing in the world. And then the world's going to collapse and you're going to think, what an idiot I am, how stupid I am. The truth is, reality is somewhere between the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And you've just got to keep moving. I always tell people, as long a moving target's hard to hit, keep moving, keep doing something, keep going forward. And you're right. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to win the lottery, okay, or I'm going to do this. I mean, look, here's reality. Nobody's going to strike an oil well in your backyard. Nobody's going to discover a gold mine in your garage. Winning and success requires effort, energy, and hard work. The only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary. Okay.
John, you're ruining my expectations about the oil well in the garage. I'm
not well.
disappointed.
I mean, it's not going to happen. At least I always say I never have won I've never even won a prize drawing at a dinner, like an award where we have door prizes. Don't win. Okay. Not going to happen for me. You got to go out and pay the price and continue to pay the price when most people quit. And by the way, one thing you said there, Elliot, which is absolutely the truth. A lot of times your family, friends, people like that, if you're deciding you're going to go out and do something bold, entrepreneurial on your own, sometimes the people you're closest to will, see, I told you it wasn't going to work, will be the first to say, they're not going to lift you up. They're going to say, see, I told you were wasting your time with that crap. You should go over there, back to that place, get that job back, do that. Okay. The reality is you got to take your own, if you're going to go for something big, you got to become very good at counseling yourself. You need to be around people who have done it like you. I mean, follow podcasts like this, do things like this. And then you got to not listen to the people who are constantly telling you to quit. Because the easiest thing to do in the world these days is quit.
And John, I want to ask you about another word that you haven't mentioned.
Yep.
Because it's one of the key tenets of my world, and that's tenacity.
Yeah.
Stick-to-itiveness, whatever you want to call it. It's overcoming all the odds. Sometimes you need to shuck and jive a little bit because, you got to refine what your vision is, and it's not necessarily 100% on day one. But if you don't have that tenacity, that willingness to get your nose bloodied, you're not going to succeed.
It's, I think it's probably one of the handful of most critical components to it. Look, we were told no so many times when we were trying to get the company public that can't happen, won't happen, doesn't work right now. Financial markets are frozen, not going to happen. And you gotta keep fighting and keep moving forward. I mean, success and winning requires you being tough. A story I tell in the book or whatever is one of my favorite movies, is The Outlaw Josie Wales. And in the scene near the end where they're at the farm, they've made it to the people that he's brought there with him. They're about to be attacked by Indians the next morning. The Comanches are coming, and none of them know what they're doing except Josie Wales. And he's got the guns. He's giving them the guns. He's telling them what to do. And at the end, he looks at them and says, look, there's going to come a point where you're going to think you're not going to make it, that you're going to die. And what you got to do when it gets there is you got to get plumb mad dog mean. Okay. And you got to fight. And that's the truth in life. I mean, most people will work hard at something as long as it's convenient. And the minute things get tough, the minute things look dark, they'll quit. And you got to make a decision in life that I'm going to get this done. I'm going to win. I'm going to figure a way. If a door closes, I'm going to find a window to go through. And I think, Elliot, tenacity is one of the most important skills you got to have if you want to win and succeed.
John, I want to talk to you about the next generation for a moment. because most people who start companies are in their 40s.
Yeah.
They're either realized they're not employable anymore, or they're the top engineer. They can't sell their way out of a paper bag, but they sure can invent it.
Right.
Or they could sell like nobody else, or
Okay.
as my wife would say, like nobody else is tomorrow.
Right.
But they need to surround themselves with financial people and so forth. But the younger generation is a little less employable than the generation before it, and doesn't quite have the same work ethic overall as maybe any other generation.
Right.
So what's your advice to this younger generation, the 25 to 40-year-olds
Right.
that are like, I feel like you had it easy compared with my world?
Well,
And there might be some truth to the fact that maybe, hey, look, I got out of college in 1979, the 1980s, after we had the bad recession at the end of the Carter thing, we had a pretty darn good economic run, and there was a lot of upward mobility in stuff. And there's some things young people say about how the world is now that there's some truth to, but guess what? That don't matter. Okay. Look, you may not like the times you live in, but guess what? These are the times you live in. Okay. And you gotta go. So one thing you said that I want to emphasize is you got to be a lot of people are not realistic about their skill set. I always tell young people, you got to find what you're good at without trying. Okay. We all have things we're good at. I've always been able to speak. I was always able to stand in front of a room when I was in 4th grade and speak. Okay. Some people are mortified of that. Okay. I found a vehicle, a lot of it luck, where my skill set allowed me to achieve and do great things. But I knew what I was good at. And more importantly, I knew what I wasn't worth a darn at. And you better surround yourself, not with people who are just like you. You need to surround yourself with complementary people who have a similar vision, but a totally different skill set that works for you. But the biggest thing I would tell young people, and this is like, I'm a 4 million miler on Delta Airlines. I mean, I've been in more airports than you can imagine. I've got every award Delta can give. And when we needed to get the company public, true story, I would get in Sky Clubs, Delta Sky Clubs, the Crown Room, as they were called back then, and I would talk to people. I'd start a conversation. I'd be sitting next to you, while we're waiting on planes to different locations, and strike up a conversation. And I made a ton of contacts. It was before smartphones, where you collected business cards. Okay. When we needed investment bankers, attorneys, deal attorneys, stuff to work with, a bunch of them came from guys I'd talked to 3 years before at the Indianapolis airport or the Salt Lake City airport that were out on things, and they were people that helped me. I'll be in airports now, and almost anyone under that age of 40, they have earbuds in, and they're doing this all the way through the airport. They're sitting in the Sky Club. I'm sitting next to them, whoever's sitting next to them on the other side, and they don't connect. I always tell I do a class every so often at the University of Georgia in their Leadership Institute, and I go, you could be sitting next to the person that could change your life. Totally.
Yeah, I love that attitude, because you're right. Everybody turns in now.
They turn in. They live in this little world that isn't the real world. You could be sitting next to the human being that if you strike up a conversation, the next thing you know, you're connected to this, connected to that, and everything changes. And you're on your phone, probably doing some stupid game with your buddies or whatever, and disconnect from these. I mean, and I realize I'm the old guy talking now. Okay, I don't feel old, but I can see myself on the screen, unfortunately. But disconnect from these things every so often. This isn't life. Learn to talk to people, communicate with people.
Funny, John, I hear every now and then from people, and they're not completely wrong, that this is the hardest time to become an entrepreneur because the cost of doing business is so expensive and the cost of hiring is so difficult, and lawsuits and lawyers and all that. And I have to remind people, there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
And I have to remind people, so let's go back to the generation of the 1930s. We had 25% unemployment. We had soup and bread lines around the corner of every place that offered it for free. We had Japan expanding in the Pacific Rim, which would ultimately bomb Pearl Harbor. We had Hitler growing with power in Europe. 30 million or 50 million, depending on how you count it, 30 to 50 million people would die over the next decade because of a world war. Right. And you think this is a more difficult time.
And one of the things that is very interesting, I have a Norman Vincent Peale book, not The Power of Positive Thinking, but it's a much earlier one. And he was writing an article in a paper about, and this is in the 1930s, in the height of the Depression. And he was talking to a businessman on Wall Street who said, young people now don't want to work. They don't want to make sacrifices. I mean, it was like something you would hear right now. Now, think about the generation that guy was talking about. My father was born in 1925, lived to be 92 years old, but born in the Depression, was raised on a textile mill village in North Georgia. By the time he was 17 years old, he was in the Pacific, flying as a bomber, as a radioman on a PB-4YK bomber for the Naval Air Corps. Then came back and was a part of the generation that called the greatest generation that built American industry of the 1950s, that regenerate. And so they were born, honestly, where they went to bed at night hungry, okay? And then by the time they were adults or just becoming adults, they're all fighting a world war. Okay. I got a short fuse on you've got it tough. Okay. Look, the reality is, guess what? Some people are freaking lucky. Okay. That's life. We're all going to have friends that we go, how did they get to that? Okay. And then there's going to be some of us that it seems like every time we think we got it going, we get hit in the teeth. I don't understand that. Maybe when we pass away, we'll have a better understanding of all of that. I mean, who knows in life, but life's not fair. I always tell young people, you got to just accept life isn't fair. If you want fair, they have them in the fall. They have cotton candy. They have rides. They have games to play. That's a fair. Okay. Fair doesn't exist in the real world.
Yeah. And I've got a good friend of mine, very successful. I don't want to tell you his name or who he worked for, but big Fortune 50 companies. And he admits that 33% of his success is just being at the right place at the right time and luck. And other people, he just had it. He admits that. But you can't live with just luck because
no.
You can't just make your own luck. That doesn't work. You just got to keep doing what you're doing. So hopefully the opportunities are around you.
Some people, I always tell people, some people never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Okay. Look, being in the right place at the right time isn't good enough. Okay. I had a lot of that happen for me. Okay. But then there were a lot of other people that were in that exact same right place that didn't wind up CEO of the company. Okay. You've got to recognize when you're in the right place at the right time, and then you got to do something about it. And I'll tell you another thing I would just tell particularly young people that are listening to this is the other thing you need to work on is being likable. I always thought likability, in my opinion, is one of the greatest abilities. I mean, some people are brilliant, but they're the biggest jerk you can possibly imagine. Nobody wants to be around them. Even if they're right, no one wants to hear it. Okay? just because of how they are. I was always able to just, you can be tough, but you could be friendly being tough. Okay. You could say, look, I don't want to be a jerk here. You seem like a good person, but let me just tell you where I'm coming from on this. Okay. It was interesting. We had an incredibly contentious battle to get the company out of city. But then when Rick Williams, who was my business partner, he was the financial half of the brain. I was the marketing visionary, let's go get it half of the brain. When we retired from being co-CEOs of Primerica, we're still on the public board. But when we retired from that, the gentleman that we had the biggest tough negotiations with, who was by then CEO of Citi, invited Rick and I to his home to his beautiful apartment on Central Park West, and had a great dinner. And he just talked about, he said, we had some tough negotiations, but you know what? I always liked you guys, always respected y'all, and knew you were fighting for your people from this position. And you knew I had a job to do, but we were able to get something done where it worked out. So a lot of people think being tough means, okay, I got to be the biggest jerk that ever walked in the room. You don't have to be that way. You learn.
Those are great words, John.
It's life's short. Don't be so confrontational. I always tell people, you got to learn to manage the contradictions in life. You got to be boldly humble. Okay. You got to be aggressively cautious. Okay. Life has a lot of dualism to it. And so, some people are just so humble, they never stand up for themselves or do anything. And then some people are just so boldly jerkish. Okay. All they do is make people mad. You got to find that balance.
So John, as we wrap this up, because this has been great, good pearls of wisdom for you. You got a book, Turning Your Fear into Fuel.
Yeah.
And let me how do people get this?
Yes. So handful of ways. One, there is a website called fearintofuelbook.com. Okay. And that will, when you click on it in there, it'll take you to Amazon to get the book, but it also connects you with me on my website, which is, AddisonLeadershipGroup.com or JohnAddisonLeadership.com. But the best way to get it is to go to Amazon. And if you just put in John Addison, Fear into Fuel, or John Addison Fear, it'll take you right to the book. But like I said, I would encourage people to go out. If you just look up John Addison Primerica or Google it, it'll take you to my website and all of that. And I would say also out when you go to Amazon, the book you mentioned, Real Leadership, which I did back in 2016, which is now volume 2. It really, in even more depth, tells the story of the battle to get the company out of Citigroup and stuff. So, I would love to connect with people. If you go to those locations, it'll take you to all of my social media and those kind of things. So,
and if you want to have some fun, when you finish reading Turn Your Fear into Fuel, make sure you order the book Driven, same place by Elliot Kallen on Amazon. And you can call us up and compare and contrast our leadership styles.
And I want you to send me a copy of your book. And I think we've already sent you one
I just got it. It's on my desk right now.
So, but I would love to have a copy of your book.
I'll get your address when we're done here.
Yeah. Sure. All right, my friend. Thank you.
So I want to thank you for being here. We've been talking with John Addison, who's former CEO of Primerica, one of the largest insurance companies in the world. And his journey, it's been an exciting, good old boy journey, I'll call it, from Georgia. Although he's not just a good old boy stereotype, he's a lot smarter than that.
Yes.
Sorry for putting out the stereotype there. But it's pretty amazing. If you want to get copies of this, they're at www.prosperityfinancialgroup.com. Reach out to us. Our phone number is there. Our email address is there. And we would love to share our book. If you want to get it signed, you give me a personal call at 925-314-8255. 8503, and we will get you a copy. Have a great day, everybody. John, thank you so much.
Thanks. Great talking with you.
Thanks. Stay on, everybody, and we'll see you real soon. Have a great day.